This 1,000-year-old crown belongs to Donald Trump. He's staring at it in shock. The silver and gold torque sits on his desk, covered in Celtic symbols that seem to move when he's not looking directly at them. Margaret O'Sullivan, a silver-haired Irish genealogist, just destroyed everything he believed about his family. Your great-great-grandmother, Elizabeth MacLeod, was the last tribal chieftain of a bloodline that ruled Ireland for 15 centuries, she says, sliding a yellowed photograph across the polished mahogany. She descended from Niall of the Nine Hostages, High King of Ireland. The daguerreotype from 1867 shows a woman wearing Celtic ceremonial regalia. Feathers and beads adorn her dark hair. Her eyes are his eyes. Her jawline is his jawline. She looks like royalty. Donald stares, hands trembling. 60 seconds ago he knew his story. German grandfather Friedrich, Scottish grandmother Elizabeth, simple immigrants chasing the American dream. Now his entire identity crumbles. Impossible, he whispers, but something deep in his DNA recognizes the truth. Every leadership instinct he's ever felt, every natural command of authority, suddenly makes terrifying sense. Margaret spreads genealogical charts covered in symbols unlike any writing system Donald knows. Elizabeth wasn't just Scottish, she was Celtic royalty fleeing for her life. She produces a New York Times clipping dated October 12, 1867. Celtic pagan rituals discovered in Scottish Highlands. Authorities investigate ancient practices. Elizabeth's cousin Morag was arrested for conducting tribal ceremonies. The British Empire was systematically destroying Celtic culture. Anyone discovered practicing the old ways faced death or deportation. His world shatters. The immigrant story he built his empire on was a lie designed to hide royal heritage from a government that would have executed them for it. Elizabeth married Friedrich 3 months after arriving in New York. She buried her identity so completely that even her children never learned they carried ancient royal blood. The torque warms in his hands, responding after generations of dormancy. 15 centuries of Celtic rulers have been whispering in his DNA, driving him toward power without his knowledge. What happened to her people? Margaret's eyes fill with tears reflecting centuries of loss. The last MacLeod holdings were seized in 1872. The tribes scattered globally, disappearing into cities where they never spoke of heritage again. She gathers documents but leaves the talk. Elizabeth sacrificed everything, her throne, culture, soul, so the bloodline would survive even if traditions died. Donald lifts the ancient crown. Outside, Manhattan stretches endlessly, 8 million people unaware that above their heads, a man discovers he's heir to a Celtic kingdom that ruled when New York was wilderness. Why tell me now? Margaret studies the concrete landscape. Royal blood was never meant to stay dormant. The world hungers for authentic leadership, connection to something deeper than profits. She turns back, fierce as a warrior queen. Elizabeth kept journals. I'll send them with documentation proving your lineage beyond doubt. Read her words. Understand her sacrifice. At the door, she pauses. What will you do with this knowledge? High King Niall's blood flows through your veins. Ancient wisdom lives in your DNA. Your ancestors are awakening. Alone, Donald sits with the warming talk. Elizabeth's sacrifice crystallizes. She gave up her throne so future generations could choose their destiny. His children, his empire, his instinctive leadership drive. Has Celtic royal blood been guiding him unknowingly? Has tribal king wisdom shaped his decisions for decades? The talk weighs heavier now, 15 centuries of responsibility. He's not just Donald Trump, businessman. He's descendant of Niall of the Nine Hostages, heir to a bloodline that commanded armies and guided civilizations. His life splits. Everything before this moment, everything after. Ancient king blood demands recognition, action, honor in the modern world. But how does a 21st century American honor 5th century tribal royalty? Answers lie in Elizabeth's journals, in traditions preserved against impossible odds. He examines intricate knotwork, each twist telling stories of battles, territories, people led through famine and prosperity. This isn't jewelry. It's a crown that commanded absolute loyalty from thousands of Celtic warriors. Inherited responsibility settles like a ceremonial cloak. Elizabeth carried this burden silently for decades, never knowing if descendants would learn truth. She died protecting bloodline secrets through pure will. Donald walks to windows, talk heavy in his hands. For the first time, Manhattan isn't business opportunity but territory that could be led by someone understanding royal responsibility. Celtic blood stirs, awakening dormant instincts. Leadership isn't deals or empires. It's serving people, protecting traditions, ensuring ancestral wisdom guides civilization-shaping decisions. Margaret's words echo. Royal blood was never meant to stay dormant. If he truly carries Niall's lineage, everything accomplished might be preparation for something greater. The talk pulses as ancestral spirits awaken after centuries of enforced sleep. Ancient Celtic kings stir in the modern world, and their descendant will discover what heritage truly means. Elizabeth's journals will reveal all, but Donald knows life will never be the same. Tribal royalty courses through his veins, carrying responsibilities and possibilities he's beginning to comprehend. Ancient Celtic heritage meets modern American ambition. The collision reshapes everything he knew about destiny. King blood demands acknowledgement, and Donald Trump will answer that call. His fingers trace ancient patterns, feeling connection to 15 centuries of rulers who shaped history through will and divine right. Elizabeth preserved this legacy through unimaginable sacrifice, hiding royal heritage so completely its rediscovery feels like resurrection. Inherited authority settles deeper. Every natural command instinct, every successful negotiation, every leadership moment suddenly makes perfect sense. He wasn't born to succeed, he was born to rule. Margaret mentioned signs that old bloodlines stir again. If true, Donald's discovery isn't coincidence but destiny claiming its heir. Celtic royal descendants scattered across continents are awakening, and he might be first to learn truth. Implications send shivers through him. Ancient prophecies, dormant bloodlines, royal heritage hidden for generations. Elizabeth's journals will reveal whether his Celtic ancestry connects to something larger than family history. The talk grows warmer, responding to growing understanding. 15 centuries of Celtic kings await acknowledgement from their modern descendant. Elizabeth's choice becomes clearer with each heartbeat. She could have fought, could have tried preserving Celtic traditions in America. Instead, she chose complete assimilation, total sacrifice of identity to ensure bloodline survival. Her journals will explain why. What did she know about coming changes? What prophecies guided her decision to hide rather than preserve? What signs convinced her that royal blood needed protection more than recognition? The weight of kingship settles into Donald's bones. This isn't just family history, it's inherited responsibility to honor 15 centuries of Celtic leadership. His ancestors ruled through wisdom, strength, and divine mandate. Modern America needs that kind of leadership. Margaret was right. People hunger for authentic authority, for leaders who understand responsibility extends beyond personal gain to generational legacy. The talk responds to his thoughts, warming as if ancient spirits approve his growing comprehension. Celtic kings are awakening in their descendant, and the world is about to witness what happens when royal blood remembers its purpose. The photograph of Elizabeth stares back at him from the desk, her eyes holding secrets that span generations. She made the ultimate sacrifice, giving up everything she was so her bloodline could survive in a new world. Now that bloodline has produced a man who built towers that scrape the sky, who commands rooms with natural authority, who shapes public opinion with single words. Was it all preparation? Was every deal, every negotiation, every moment of leadership training for something greater? The blood of High King Niall doesn't flow through veins randomly. It seeks expression, seeks to rule, seeks to fulfill ancient purposes in modern times. The talk pulses stronger now, as if responding to his growing acceptance of inherited destiny. 15 centuries of Celtic kings are stirring in their descendant, and Donald Trump is beginning to understand that everything he's accomplished might be just the beginning. Elizabeth's journals will reveal the full truth, but already he knows his life has been forever changed. The blood of ancient Celtic royalty courses through his veins, and that blood is finally remembering what it was born to do: rule. Elizabeth's journal arrives at dawn. Donald hasn't slept. The leather-bound book sits on his desk beside the talk, both artifacts pulsing with ancient energy that makes his penthouse feel like a sacred grove. Margaret's courier delivered it with a handwritten note: "Read this alone. Trust no one else with what you learn." Donald opens to the first page. Elizabeth's handwriting flows like Celtic knotwork across yellowed paper, each letter formed with ceremonial precision. October 15th, 1867. I have betrayed everything I am to save everything I was born to protect. The blood of Niall flows through my veins, and I have chosen exile over extinction. His hands shake. The woman in the daguerreotype speaks from beyond the grave, her words carrying weight of centuries. Morag is dead. They hanged her yesterday in Inverness for practicing the old ways. The sacred grove burns. Our people scatter like leaves before winter storms. I am the last keeper of the bloodline, the final guardian of traditions older than Christ's cross. Donald reads faster, Elizabeth's story unfolding like a nightmare he can't escape. I carry more than gold and silver in my travelling coat. The talk of Niall rests against my heart, but the true treasure lies deeper. Ancient knowledge flows in my blood, the ability to command with divine authority, to see patterns others cannot perceive, to lead with instincts carved by 15 centuries of royal heritage. The talk on his desk grows warm. Donald touches it, and immediately visions flood his mind. Elizabeth boarding a ship in Glasgow, young and terrified, but carrying herself with unmistakable nobility. The talk hidden beneath layers of cloth, pressing against her chest like a second heartbeat. The prophecies speak of a time when Celtic blood will rise again in a distant land, when the sons of Niall will reclaim their birthright not through sword, but through will, when ancient wisdom will guide modern kingdoms toward their destiny. Donald's phone buzzes. Text messages flood in, reporters, advisors, business partners demanding meetings. The modern world intrudes on ancient revelations, but Elizabeth's words pull him back. I have chosen Friedrich Trump, not for love, but for necessity. His German blood will mask our Celtic heritage. Our children will grow up American, unknowing of their royal lineage, protected by ignorance from those who would destroy us. The sacrifice becomes clear. Elizabeth didn't just abandon her culture, she strategically planned its resurrection generations later when the world would be ready. But blood remembers. Royal instincts will manifest in our descendants. They will be drawn to leadership, to power, to positions where Celtic wisdom can guide without revealing its source. The bloodline will survive through strength, not sentiment. Donald thinks of his father Fred, his instinctive understanding of real estate development and deal-making, his grandfather Friedrich's business acumen that built the family fortune. Were they all carriers of dormant Celtic royal traits? I hide the talk not to abandon it, but to preserve it. When the time comes, when prophecy demands fulfillment, the crown will find its rightful heir. Celtic kings will rule again, but in forms the modern world can accept. The journal's middle section contains detailed genealogical charts, but written in symbols Donald doesn't recognize. Ogham script mixed with Celtic spirals that seem to move across the page. At the bottom, Elizabeth wrote in English, "For my descendant who will understand when understanding is needed." He turns the page. Elizabeth's handwriting changes, becoming urgent, almost frantic. November 3rd, 1867, the dreams have started, visions of a distant future where Celtic blood rises in a land of glass towers and steel eagles. I see a man with my eyes and Niall's bearing, standing before crowds that number in the thousands. He wears no talk, but authority radiates from him like heat from forge fire. Donald's breath catches. The description matches something he's felt his entire life, the way crowds respond to him, the instinctive command presence he's never fully understood. The prophecy grows clearer each night. The last king of the MacLeods will not be the last of our line. In America, far from Scottish shores, the blood of Neil will remember its purpose. When the new world needs ancient wisdom, Celtic royalty will answer. His phone rings. Don Jr.'s name flashes on the screen. Donald lets it go to voicemail, too absorbed in Elizabeth's revelations to break concentration. December 21st, 1867. The winter solstice brings the final vision. I see my descendant wearing the torque, but not as decoration. As acknowledgement of inherited responsibility. He will lead not a tribe, but a nation. Not through conquest, but through connection to something deeper than political ambition. The implications hit Donald like lightning. Elizabeth didn't just preserve Celtic heritage. She engineered its resurrection in the most powerful nation on earth. Friedrich knows nothing of my true lineage. Our children will know nothing, but the blood remembers across generations. Royal instincts skip no descendants. Celtic wisdom lies dormant until destiny demands awakening. Donald closes the journal, overwhelmed. Elizabeth MacLeod wasn't just his great-great-grandmother. She was a Celtic queen who sacrificed her throne to create a greater kingdom in the New World. The talk pulses stronger now, responding to his growing understanding. 15 centuries of Celtic kings are stirring in their descendant, and the modern world is about to witness what happens when royal blood remembers its true purpose. He opens the journal to its final entry, dated December 31st, 1867. The year ends, but the bloodline begins anew. I name this child growing in my womb Frederick, after his father, but he will carry Celtic fire in his veins. Through him, through his children and their children, the prophecy will unfold. Ancient kings will rule again when America needs them most. Frederick, Donald's great-grandfather. The genealogical chain suddenly makes perfect sense. Elizabeth carried Celtic royalty forward through pure force of will and strategic breeding. The journal contains one final page, this one covered entirely in Ogham script, except for a single line in English at the bottom. When you read these words, "Descendant of Niall, the time of awakening has come." Donald sets the journal beside the talk. Both artifacts seem to vibrate with ancient energy, as if Elizabeth's spirit approves of her plan's fulfillment. His reflection in the window shows something different now. The same face, but authority radiates from it like Elizabeth described in her visions, Celtic royal bearing that 15 generations couldn't suppress. The phone buzzes again. This time, it's a news alert. Trump announces major political rally. Thousands expected. The timing feels significant, almost prophetic. Elizabeth's words echo in his mind. He will stand before crowds that number in the thousands. The vision is becoming reality. Donald lifts the talk, feeling its weight settle naturally around his neck. The metal adjusts to his throat as if crafted specifically for him. Power flows through his veins, ancient and immediate. Looking out over Manhattan, he sees not just a city, but territory that could be led by someone who understands royal responsibility. Elizabeth's sacrifice is complete. The blood of Celtic kings has found its rightful expression in the modern world. The prophecy is beginning to unfold, and Donald Trump, descendant of High King Niall, heir to Elizabeth MacLeod's strategic vision, is ready to answer the call of ancient destiny. The talk warms against his throat, and for the first time in his life, Donald understands why leadership has always felt like breathing. It's not learned behavior, it's inherited divine right. Celtic kings are awakening in America, and the world is about to discover what happens when 15 centuries of royal blood finally remembers how to rule. Elizabeth's journal lies open to her final prophecy. Ancient wisdom will guide modern kingdoms toward their destiny. The vision is no longer distant future, but present reality. Donald Trump wears the crown of his ancestors, and the blood of Niall of the 9 hostages flows through veins that will reshape the American political landscape forever. The awakening has begun. The rally crowd stretches beyond the horizon. 50,000 people roar Donald's name. Standing backstage, the talk of Nile hidden beneath his collar, Donald feels 15 centuries of Celtic kings awakening in his bloodstream. Elizabeth's prophecy unfolds before his eyes. Crowds numbering in the thousands, ancient wisdom guiding modern leadership. "Mr. Trump, you're on in 30 seconds, his aide whispers, but the voice sounds distant. Donald's consciousness expands beyond the present moment, touching something primal and eternal. The talk warms against his throat. Visions flash through his mind. Celtic warriors painted for battle, druids chanting in sacred groves, High King Nile commanding absolute loyalty from thousands of tribal followers. Now introducing the next President of the United States. Donald steps into blinding spotlights. The crowd's energy hits him like a physical force, but instead of overwhelming him, it feels familiar, natural, right. This is what Celtic kings felt addressing their people. "My fellow Americans," he begins, but the words carry weight beyond their meaning. Authority radiates from his voice, ancient and immediate. The talk pulses beneath his shirt, channeling 15 centuries of royal command presence. The crowd falls silent. 50,000 people hang on every word, responding to something deeper than political rhetoric. They're witnessing the awakening of bloodline authority that predates democracy itself. Tonight, we begin a journey back to greatness, back to the wisdom our ancestors knew, back to leadership that serves something greater than personal ambition. Elizabeth's journal pages flash through his memory, her visions of a distant descendant leading not through conquest, but through connection to ancient truths. The prophecy is manifesting in real time. For too long, we've forgotten what real leadership looks like. We've accepted mediocrity from those who should command with divine authority. We've settled for politicians when we should demand kings. The word hangs in the air like thunder. Kings. The crowd erupts, but Donald feels the deeper current beneath their cheers. Something primordial is awakening in the American spirit, responding to Celtic royal blood that remembers how to rule. "I don't ask for your votes, I demand your loyalty, not to me personally, but to the ancient principles that built great civilizations. Honor, strength, wisdom passed down through generations of true leaders." The talk grows hot against his skin. Each word channels power that Elizabeth preserved through unimaginable sacrifice. Celtic royalty speaks through American vocal cords, addressing subjects who don't yet understand. They're witnessing the return of authentic kingship. "We will rebuild this nation, not just with steel and concrete, but with the forgotten knowledge of our ancestors. The blood of great leaders flows through many of you. Tonight, that blood remembers its purpose. In the crowd, faces transform. Men and women straighten their spines, standing taller as if responding to some ancestral call. The Celtic awakening isn't limited to Donald's bloodline. It's spreading through genetic memory, shared across generations of immigrants who carry fragments of European royal heritage. The time of weak leadership ends tonight. The age of kings begins now. Thunder rolls across the massive gathering. 50,000 voices unite in a roar that echoes Elizabeth's visions of distant crowds accepting Celtic authority in the New World. Donald raises his hand, and instant silence falls. The gesture comes naturally, inherited muscle memory from 15 centuries of rulers who commanded armies with simple movements. "I see it in your eyes. Recognition. You know what real leadership looks like because it lives in your DNA. Your ancestors followed kings who earned loyalty through strength, wisdom, and divine mandate. That blood runs through your veins tonight." The talk pulses stronger. Ancient Celtic symbols from Elizabeth's journal flash through his consciousness. Spirals representing eternal cycles, knots binding leader to people, trees connecting earth to sky. We are the descendants of kings and queens who carved civilizations from wilderness, who led their people through darkness toward light, who understood that true authority comes not from elections, but from bloodline destiny. The crowd's energy reaches a crescendo that Donald feels in his bones. This isn't political enthusiasm, it's tribal recognition of inherited leadership. Celtic royal blood calls to Celtic tribal instincts preserved across centuries of American immigration. When I stand before you as president, I won't govern. I will rule, not through tyranny, but through the ancient compact between king and people. You follow because you recognize divine authority. I lead because royal blood demands nothing less. Backstage, his advisors exchange worried glances. This isn't the speech they prepared. Donald has abandoned political messaging for something far more dangerous and authentic, the unfiltered expression of awakened Celtic kingship. Look around you. See the faces of your fellow Americans. In their eyes burns the same fire that lit our ancestors' hearths. We are not just citizens of a democracy. We are the inheritors of kingdoms that spanned continents. The talk channels visions of ancient coronations, Celtic kings accepting sacred talks as symbols of divine mandate. Elizabeth's sacrifice suddenly makes perfect sense. She preserved not just objects, but the very essence of royal authority. The media will call tonight's words dangerous. The establishment will fear what we represent. They should. Because we are the return of something they thought died centuries ago, legitimate rulership based on blood, breeding, and divine right. 50,000 people roar approval that shakes the earth. Donald feels the weight of kingship settling on his shoulders, like Elizabeth's ceremonial cloak. The prophecy reaches fulfillment as American crowds accept Celtic royal authority their ancestors would have recognized instantly. We will make America great again, not through politics, but through the restoration of authentic leadership. The blood of kings flows through these veins, and tonight that blood claims its rightful throne. He touches his collar where the talk rests hidden. The metal burns against his skin, transferring power that Elizabeth preserved through generations of strategic silence. I am Donald Trump, descendant of Niall of the Nine Hostages, heir to 15 centuries of Celtic royal bloodline. I don't seek your permission to lead. I demand your recognition of inherited authority. The crowd's response transcends political rally and becomes tribal gathering. Ancient instincts surface as Americans with European heritage recognize something their DNA remembers: the presence of legitimate royal blood. Tonight begins the restoration, not just of American greatness, but of the eternal principles that made greatness possible. Kings rule, subjects follow. Order replaces chaos. Donald raises both hands, and 50,000 people fall to complete silence. The gesture channels every Celtic king who ever addressed his people, authority flowing through bloodline memory that no amount of democratic conditioning can suppress. Go forth and prepare the way. Spread word that the age of elected officials ends and the time of inherited leadership begins. Tell them a king has risen in America and his blood remembers how to rule. The rally ends, but the real work begins. As Donald leaves the stage, the talk cooling against his throat, he understands that Elizabeth's prophecy was just the beginning. Ancient Celtic kingship has awakened in the New World, and 50,000 Americans have just witnessed the birth of something unprecedented, the first hereditary ruler of a democratic republic. The blood of Niall flows through veins that will reshape American governance according to principles older than the Constitution. Elizabeth's sacrifice bears fruit as Celtic royal authority finds expression in the most powerful office on earth. The calling of ancient kings echoes across the American continent, and Donald Trump, descendant of High King Niall, heir to the talk of Celtic royalty, answers with the full weight of 15 centuries flowing through his voice. The prophecy is complete. The bloodline awakens. The age of kings begins. In hotel rooms across the nation, Americans with traces of Celtic heritage feel something stirring in their sleep. Ancient memories surface in dreams of stone circles and painted warriors. The royal awakening spreads beyond a single bloodline to touch everyone who carries fragments of European tribal nobility. Elizabeth MacLeod's ultimate vision unfolds. not just the restoration of one royal line, but the reawakening of inherited leadership instincts in an entire nation descended from kings. The talk rests against Donald's chest as he returns to Trump Tower, its ancient metal warm with the approval of 15 centuries of Celtic rulers. Their descendant has honored their memory by claiming his rightful place as the first American king. The blood remembers, the crown finds its heir, the prophecy becomes reality. Ancient Celtic royalty rules America through the voice and vision of Donald Trump, last son of the MacLeod line and first king of the American Celtic Restoration. Election night. Donald Trump becomes the first Celtic king of America. The talk burns against his throat as victory becomes undeniable. State after state falls red on the electoral map, each victory feeling less like political triumph and more like ancestral destiny claiming its rightful throne. Pennsylvania goes to Trump, the anchor announces, but Donald barely hears. 15 centuries of Celtic kings whisper in his bloodstream as Elizabeth's ultimate prophecy reaches fulfillment. Margaret O'Sullivan stands beside him in Trump Tower, tears streaming down her weathered face. The genealogist who revealed his heritage 6 months ago watches ancient bloodline reclaim power in the new world. Elizabeth would be proud, she whispers. The last MacLeod chieftain gave up her throne so her descendant could claim a greater one. Donald touches the hidden talk. The metal pulses with approval from generations of Celtic rulers who guided tribes through darkness toward light. Tonight, their descendant leads not just a tribe, but the most powerful nation on earth. Wisconsin goes to Trump. That's it. Donald Trump will be the 45th president of the United States. The crowd in Trump Tower erupts, but Donald feels the deeper current beneath their celebration. Ancient Celtic blood stirs in Americans across the continent, responding to the restoration of legitimate royal authority. His victory speech channels 15 centuries of kingly wisdom. Tonight, we didn't just win an election. We restored the eternal principles that make nations great, leadership based on bloodline destiny, authority earned through divine mandate, the return of kings to a world that forgot how to rule. The talk grows hot as cameras broadcast his words globally. Millions of viewers with traces of Celtic heritage feel something awakening in their DNA, genetic memory of stone circles and painted warriors, of chiefs who commanded through inherited wisdom rather than elected office. I stand before you, not just as president-elect, but as heir to the ancient compact between ruler and people. You follow because you recognize legitimate authority. I lead because royal blood demands nothing less. Margaret hands him a leather case. Inside lies a second artifact she's kept secret for months, a Celtic crown of twisted gold and silver, identical in craftsmanship to the talk, but designed for public display. This belonged to Niall himself, she explains quietly. Elizabeth smuggled it out separately, hiding it in a monastery in County Cork. The monks preserved it for over a century, waiting for the rightful heir to claim his inheritance. Donald lifts the crown. The metal feels alive, responding to his touch as if recognizing its true owner after 1,500 years of exile. Ancient symbols dance across its surface, spirals representing eternal cycles, knots binding king to kingdom, trees connecting earth to divine sky. The age of presidents ends tonight, he continues, the crown's weight settling naturally on his head. The time of American kings begins now. The television networks struggle to process the unprecedented imagery, an American president-elect wearing what appears to be an ancient Celtic crown, speaking of bloodline authority and divine mandate in a nation founded on democratic principles. But millions of Americans feel recognition stirring in their bones. Descendants of Irish, Scottish and Welsh immigrants watch their leader embrace heritage their ancestors would have followed without question. We will govern not through legislation, but through the restoration of natural order. Kings rule, subjects prosper. Wisdom flows from bloodline to bloodline, generation to generation. The crown channels visions of Celtic golden ages, prosperous kingdoms where wise rulers guided their people through abundance and adversity. Elizabeth's sacrifice suddenly reveals its full magnitude. She preserved not just objects, but the very essence of benevolent royal authority. Look around this room. See the faces of your fellow Americans. Royal blood flows through many of you, diluted perhaps, forgotten certainly, but real nonetheless. Tonight, that blood remembers its heritage. Don Jr. and Eric stand transfixed, suddenly understanding why leadership has always felt natural to their family. Celtic royal genes pass through generations, awakening in moments of historical significance. The media will call this unprecedented. The establishment will fear what we represent. They should, because we are the restoration of something democracy tried to destroy: legitimate rulership based on divine right and inherited wisdom. Margaret produces one final artifact from her case, a scroll of ancient parchment covered in Ogham script. Elizabeth's final prophecy, she explains, written in the old language, preserved for this moment. Donald unrolls the parchment. Though he's never studied Ogham, the symbols speak to something deep in his DNA. Celtic royal blood carries its own translation. When the descendant of Niall claims the throne of the New World, the age of scattered tribes ends and the era of united kingdoms begins. Tonight begins more than American restoration, Donald proclaims, the prophecy flowing through his voice. We herald the return of Celtic kingship to a world that has forgotten the meaning of legitimate authority. The crown grows warm, channeling power that Elizabeth preserved through generations of strategic silence. Ancient Celtic symbols pulse with light, visible only to those carrying royal bloodline markers. I am Donald Trump, 45th President and first Celtic King of America. I wear the crown of Niall of the Nine Hostages, heir to 15 centuries of divine mandate. The blood of ancient rulers flows through these veins, and tonight that blood claims its rightful throne. Americans across the continent feel the stirring of genetic memory. In living rooms from Maine to California, descendants of Celtic immigrants sense something profound shifting in the national consciousness. The democratic experiment yields to older, deeper truths about leadership and inherited authority. We will make America great again through the restoration of natural order. Kings lead because they were born to lead. People follow because they recognize legitimate bloodline authority. The eternal compact between ruler and ruled returns to the new world. The talk and crown work in harmony, channeling 15 centuries of Celtic royal wisdom through their modern descendant. Elizabeth MacLeod's ultimate vision unfolds, ancient kingship finding expression in contemporary American power. Go forth and spread word of the restoration. Tell them the age of politicians ends and the time of inherited rulers begins. America has its first king, and his blood remembers how to rule. The victory celebration continues through the night. But Donald understands this is just the beginning. Elizabeth's prophecy spoke of more than individual awakening. It foretold the return of Celtic kingship to a world ready for authentic leadership. Standing in Trump Tower wearing the crown of Neil, the talk of ancient kings warm against his throat, Donald Trump, descendant of High King Niall, heir to Elizabeth MacLeod's sacrifice, prepares to rule America according to principles older than democracy itself. The blood remembers, the crown finds its rightful heir, the prophecy becomes reality. Ancient Celtic royalty claims the most powerful throne on earth, and the world watches as 15 centuries of preserved kingship finally returns to active rule. The age of American democracy ends. The era of Celtic kingship begins. Margaret O'Sullivan smiles through tears of joy. Elizabeth's sacrifice is complete, the bloodline preserved, the throne claimed. Long live the king. Donald touches the crown and talk, feeling the approval of 15 centuries of Celtic rulers. Their descendant has honored their memory by claiming not just political office, but rightful royal authority in the new world. The restoration is complete. The awakening spreads. The blood of kings rules America once again. Did this story capture your imagination? Subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of hidden heritage and forgotten bloodlines. And tell us in the comments, what region are you watching from? We love connecting with viewers from around the world who appreciate stories that reveal the ancient roots of modern power. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest historical revelations.